Welcome to Inside the Firm, a podcast dedicated to small business owners and hosted by entrepreneurs, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. Each week, they take you on their journey of how to start, run, and grow a business by bringing you inside their architecture and real estate development firm. Get a behind-the-scenes tour of how these business leaders manage their clients and foster company culture while creating new and innovative projects. And now your hosts, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Firm. I'm your host, Alex Gore. I'm here with Lance, Luxury Division Cayko. The reason I bring that up again is I feel like you wear that every Friday just to make me jealous.
I sleep in this thing.
All right, that's fair then. Then it's not every Friday. He sleeps with it.
Yep.
We just got a new addition in Boulder. And house and then maybe a duplex in back.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Wow. A duplex in the back of this lot?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. They have an alley back there, but it's like a defunct alley. So it's like, can you do it? Haven't looked into it.
Wow. Very interesting.
Anyways, they asked about this architect builder. And I always say we are your architect first. Then if things work out and if you're in the area, we can bid on it, see if it goes. They like that so much that that's one of the main reasons why we got it.
Amazing.
So if you are interested in that, because it literally doubles, quadruples your fee and extends your life and all that, especially in like some of the stuff that we're going to talk about this next recession.
Oh, yeah. It's coming.
And if you want a framework, right? You went to school to become an architect. You can go back to school to become a builder, but I don't think it's necessary to go back to university. I think it's overpriced. I think they teach you a bunch of stuff that doesn't really matter, and it's not tied to reality. The best way to tie it to reality is what you want to do. So if you ever want to take your architecture projects, small additions, small tenant finishes, or residential houses, that is the specific knowledge you want. Architect to Builder is the way to go. And it's at architectsguide2.com. Check out architectsguide2.com, where we show you what we went through so you don't have to go through all those headaches. architectsguide2.com.
As design and architecture demand increases towards pre-pandemic levels and beyond, how are you and your firm keeping up? ARCAT is here to help. ARCAT.com offers several free tools to help architecture and design firms like yours, Al Gore, to get work done faster. Use ARCAT's powerful search engine to find the right products for your projects and download BIM, CAD, and specifications right there on the same page without needing to pay or register. ARCAT.com also offers product videos, catalogs, green reports, product certification, information, outline, and short-form specification generation, and more. ARCAT is your one-stop solution to help increase your productivity and get more projects done. That's ARCAT.com. That's ARCAT.com. Check those guys out. They are a huge supporter of our podcast. So supporting them helps support us and ultimately helps us support you. This episode was also brought to you by Pella Luxury. That's right.
Pella.
Lance, Pella Luxury Cayko. Experience a collection of brands that brings your creative vision to life. The luxury division of Pella is a world-class collection of brands including Duratherm, Riley, and Bonelli, all pioneers of industry who provide window and door solutions to discerning architects, the building industry, and beyond. During this holiday season, we know how it is important to step back and spend time in gratitude. We appreciate all your clients trusting us with your projects in a record-breaking year. We are excited and ready to take on the new year. The luxury division of Pella doesn't push beyond the limits. We set them. Explore PellaLuxury.com/the firm. That's right, PellaLuxury.com/the firm. Today, check those guys out. Again, another big supporter of the podcast. Your support of Pella Luxury, heading over to that website, PellaLuxury.com/the firm, helps support Pella, which helps support us, which helps support you. So let's all support each other. Al Gore, what do we got?
Some listener feedback. Just wanted to share it. I thought it was cool.
Keep going. I'm just going to turn the light back here.
Oh, okay. It was Dude, which I love being addressed as that. I'm on episode number 7 of the podcast. It's freaking awesome. Very interesting insight. Thank you for that. He's leaving a review. Great shout out. Okay, I want to go over, what do you call it? Not a revelation.
Epiphany?
Thank you. Epiphany.
There you go.
I had. And this is the simplest marketing advice I think you will ever hear. It is extremely simple. It's just you have to find a way to execute it. Mm-hmm. And the proof is in the pudding, right? So the proof, our firm is over 10 years old, right? The easiest projects we have gotten are projects that people have saw and they want something similar on their site. The first one, for example, are these Atlas tiny houses. We've done 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, because if you count the Titans. And then we've done 1 or 2 just like not Atlas tiny houses.
One that is not an Atlas tiny house. It was a mobile dog grooming and therapy house.
Yep. Eastwatch is another one that people love. It's on the cover of Builder magazine, January of earlier this year, 2021. It has at least 3 babies, possibly a 4th baby coming.
Amazing.
Which is amazing. And so there's the proof in, like, it's literally the easiest sell to get done. The second thing is that it's worked in reverse. Had this client, wanted a passive house, been following us since the Atlas houses, and is like, now I'm going to build. I wanted to reach out to you guys, blah, blah, blah.
Since the first one?
Since the first one, been following us.
So to put that in perspective, we built that in 2014. Pretty sure it was 2014. So about 6 or 7 years ago. I've emphasized this before, but like, you're playing a long game as an architect, as somebody in the real estate industry. Even realtors fall into this category. Developers certainly fall into this category. Like, you're playing a long game with closing, getting attention, and then closing out the deal.
Yep. Just like the book. What a long game for that too. Anyways, loved us. They didn't want a tiny house. They wanted something different. We ended up not getting the job. She called back and told me why. They went with someone that does basically strictly or a lot of passive houses. So now that we got the data on both, like not getting something and getting something, here is the advice. You need to, the best marketing advice, produce what you want others to pay you to do. Produce what you want others to pay you to do. Do you want to design skyscrapers? You need to produce a skyscraper. And we'll talk about how to do that. You want to do custom houses? You need to produce a custom house. You want to do a tiny house? You need to produce a tiny house. You want to do museums? Somehow you have to be on the production of design or building of a museum. And I have 3 kind of ways to do it.
Interesting.
The third one, I wonder what you think about the third one, right? So the first one is, get a job at a firm that is doing what you want to do.
It makes sense.
That's the easiest, right? But sometimes you can't. Sometimes they're not hiring.
Sometimes a recession hits.
Sometimes the recession hits. Sometimes you're just not the right candidate, and they might have a bunch of other candidates. Mm-hmm. But that's number 1, okay? The second is, if you can't do that, then you got to do it in your free time. And this is the simplest marketing advice you'll ever have. What do you want people to pay you to do? Okay, do that. Do that in your free time. Here's an example. Fielding, I think his name is Jeremy Fielding. He's a YouTube guy. He's an engineering guy. He actually wasn't even an engineer. Did I tell you about this guy?
I can't remember, Al.
Wasn't an engineer, but wanted to be one. Loves like robotics and that stuff. His YouTube things are awesome, right? And he just said, hey, can I come work at your engineering firm? And they're like, no, but like if you want to come sit there, you can. And he's like, what do I need to do to become an engineer? He's like, well, you need to go to school, but actually the most thing you need to know is know SolidWorks. So here's a book on SolidWorks. Mm-hmm. Teach yourself SolidWorks. Mm-hmm. Taught himself SolidWorks. Then the guy after that is like, okay, here's some work. Try this workout. Did it. Oh, okay. Now you're hired. And the company he's working with builds industrial robots. So he took it to the next level. He is building an industrial robot, like all of it. Amazing. From scratch.
Yeah.
He wanted to, he's like, he has to learn how to code. So because the machines, move and stuff, but he's like, well, you can program it digitally, but then it comes out with all this code and I don't know what that code means. So like, I don't know how to fix errors. And there's all these like letters like that mean something, like TM means something, whatever means something. So he just went and he wrote those all on flashcards, and at work he would just test himself, right? So he wanted to build industrial robots and be an engineer. So literally that's what he does in his free time. And that's what he gets paid to do, right? So that's the second way. Now, let's say the problem with both of those two, with your free time and a job if you can't get one, is like you might not know that you're not that good.
Yeah, what's your sounding board, right?
What's your feedback loop?
Yeah.
So that was in my thought process another problem that I have some advice, but maybe you have some insight on it. Okay, you don't have a great feedback loop, so you're just producing stuff and maybe it's like no one's interested, no one's engaged, right? And I'm against you just going and saying, hey, I'm going to be a free intern at your office. Because I think on a macro level, then the firms that have the power can take advantage of that.
And they do.
Yep. So here's something, and I thought, would I fall for this? You know, like as a business owner, and it might be. Someone comes up to you, Lance, I want to do stuff that F9 does. And I'm not saying people do this at all. This is literally just like talking out loud. Say, hey, all I want to do is design houses and cool houses, and that's it.
Tiny houses.
Yep. And that's not all our firm. Tiny houses. And our firm isn't.
I'm trying to get you to be specific because it's a real,
Tiny houses.
Yeah.
I want to design them myself, but I know that I don't know a lot. So can I sit in your office and do that like in my free time for the next couple months? And I'll ask people questions where I don't know it. Ask for feedback. Ask people for a review. But I realize that I'm taking up some of their time. So in a 40-hour week, I'll give you 10 hours of my time if I can sit there for the rest of the 30, do my own work, and ask people questions.
That sounds terrible.
Okay, there you go.
So time is very valuable. That sounds awful. First of all, there's the whole ethics of the whole thing, right? I am the type of person that does not like to owe people money. So it really stresses me out if I owe people money and then I'm, let's say, waiting on like a bank for a construction draw or something like that. Like that is easily one of the most stressful things in my life is owing people money. I just can't stand it. So then the same thought process applies to owing people. They're doing work for free. So it's the same sort of thing. Does that make sense?
That's why I didn't think you'd like it.
So I hate that. And then I also, and this is like a trait that Alex and I share. There's some that we share, obviously, and then some that are opposite. But like one that I guarantee we share is that we like to do what we want to do. And so all of a sudden, if somebody else has another idea just out of the blue of how they want to operate or do things, we have just this innate thing inside of us that pushes back. And then all of a sudden, our heart and soul and mind and everything isn't going to be into it. And then that's a different kind of level of stress, right?
Oh, 100%. So before you go any farther, two thought processes on that. One is, because this doesn't just have to be architecture. They could be like, I want to code the next Facebook, right? I want to work in aerospace, right? Okay. And if someone came in those and be like, I'm going to code the next Facebook and I'm going to sit here and like get people to jump on board, you'd be like, no, you're not. No, everyone's doing their own shit. No, you're not.
Yeah.
And then, but before that, you tried to maybe get a job at there and be like, sorry, you didn't make the cut, blah, blah, blah. So you're like, holy cow. Like, I can't make the next Facebook. Like, I can try, but like, I have no feedback loop. I have no one hearted. You can try to get a mentor, but like, I've been a mentor. Like, there's only so much time. We can't, have that constant thing. And so then it's like, okay, I want to do this, but I'm not getting the job at that specific place that I want. Mm-hmm. And I know that this is something I want to do for the 10, 15, 30 years of my life. So that's fine because I agree with you. It's not like the perfect solution. Like, how do you get into with that feedback loop, with people that actually know what they're doing? Because people that actually know what they're doing in this economy are extremely busy. It doesn't matter what industry.
I like that we have a tangible example that we are using as the basis for this exploration, and that is the tiny houses, right?
Yep, they want to make a tiny house company.
So let's continue with that thought process. My recommendation to those people would be on the lines of this Fielding fella, whoever this engineer was, where he took it upon himself to learn the software, right? And then let's say then in pretend land, he picked up Alex's book through Creativity Code and learned how to basically design.
Sure.
You know, as a very cursory level primer. Of course, we all know one book isn't going to teach you how to design. It takes a lot more practice, right? But it will give you enough primer. How do you get to a feedback loop? If it was me, I would go look for community forums online. It could be Reddit, it could be Facebook, it could be any multitude. I don't even know if I need to name any other ones, but you get my point here, and that is, could you put your designs up for that community and get feedback from them, right? I think so. I think that's where I would go with that. The analogy is also akin to this podcast. Going all the way back to the episode number 7 that Stefan wrote to us about is within the first 25 episodes, one thing we weren't doing was screening our audio. So I wasn't like it's now I use this program. It's really awesome. By the way, if you're a podcaster, fixmylevels.com. I use it all the time because it automatically, there's an algorithm written where you just process your audio through once you're done like doing the intro, the outro. Nick reads, Elon reads, all of that. And then it evens everything out so there's no big high or low points in your audio, and it's nice and even listening. We got some feedback right away within the first 20 episodes of somebody. I will never forget this. Mm-hmm. And they said, I love your podcast, but for the love of God, something like this. Can you fix the audio levels in your show? Because like it'll go from low to high, crazy high, and then blow out your eardrums, right? Especially if you're listening with earphones. So even just putting yourself, what I'm getting at is like somehow putting yourself in front of an audience is the critical part here. So like that's another example of it. And I don't know. Beyond that, just take that and run with it.
Yep. I think also if you were doing something like physical, mechanical, we have a tinker mill in Longmont. I'm sure there's other things.
Yeah. There's probably all of those examples all over.
Yep. Another thing too is you could get a desk at a WeWork station or Thrive is one that's in Denver. There's a bunch of there's at least one architecture firm. There's now 2 since we're down there. So like, let's say you're just sitting there and you can walk around and see people label what they do. And before you even commit to like a $50 desk per month, and then be like, hey, I'm trying to be a tiny house builder. I see that you're an architect. Could I run this concept by you? And just do it that way.
Yeah.
I think the key is, besides get a job there or do it in your off time, and even if you're doing it in your off time, somehow get that feedback loop.
There you go. Yeah. But man, I hope to kind of wrap the whole thing up, I hope it proved to you that, especially in this day and age with the access to information and the cheap software and just cheap knowledge, meaning like literally monetarily wise. I don't mean that, it's not valuable, obviously, once you digest it and learn the skill, but their barriers to entry are the lowest they probably have ever been in the history of the world.
Because,
get it on.
Going back to the other examples of coding or doing anything, the university is 4 years, $30,000 a year. A course, the amount of courses, because I'm looking at even stuff for like kids, but like getting up, they're like $300.
I have
they're worth their weight.
My wife hates this. We are a blended family, so two biological children each. My wife hates that I do this, but to our oldest, who's going to go to college next year, I just flat out tell him, Brett, if you don't think a 4-year university is for you, consider a trade school. Like, what could it hurt? And then she gets all mad at me, and I'm like, honey,
welders, come on,
look at your husband. That's what just because you get the trade degree doesn't mean you can't go to a 4-year and then go get a master's and then literally end up teaching at a university. Like, why not? If you are doing the right things, right? Not having children out of wedlock, like not putting yourself in, going in crazy amounts of debt, like living that kind of a life where you're taking care of your responsibilities and not overextending yourself and putting yourself in a hole. What is stopping you from just continuing? I remember my grandpa at one point when I was being recruited to MIT, he was like, "Well, are you ever going to stop going to school?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe not. I mean, they keep paying me to go. I'm glad I didn't."
Right.
Because then I had my sounding board was Mark, one of our professors, and he said, "No, you need to go practice." And I'm glad I did. But
what good advice? Like you will learn.
And Mark actually he doesn't have a PhD, but close to it with his degree from Pratt. Like,
Sure.
he has some kind of it's like a 3-year thing. So,
Yep. Cool.
good
Okay.
stuff, Al.
I wanted to touch back. Last week we talked about the idea of government thrashing, and again, thrashing is a computer term where the computer system or processor gets too many tasks, so it just checks in on each task and does absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. We talked about it in the context of, man, for every project, the city will have every department, including the police department, look at it, and all of a sudden you just get thrashed because all these people are looking at every project and just doing minor to no comments to nothing, and the project takes years, right? I also want to talk about it. It just hit me, and I just wanted to bring it up briefly. It's not a big segment. I think that this is the problem of government on the larger level, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to be like, not libertarian to the sense, but if you wanted to be like, what are the fundamental things that the government should do?
Yeah.
Right? And let's just say it is police, fire response, build the roads and utilities, and like, you could add on a couple other things, but like they should do these fundamental things extremely well. Once you add on to their tasks, tackle this, 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 and all the special interests, do this, do this, do this. I think the leaders of the government get thrashed, meaning like literally all they do is like, oh, we're just going to assign all these tasks and there's no progress on maybe the fundamental things. And what I'm getting at is like, you will overlook the base that makes you stable if you have too many things on your plate. And then that base is now buried in a bunch of sand, and the base could corrode away because you're just thrashing yourself on everything else.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how a reset happens at some point, because number one, the spending's not sustainable. Number two, like it is objectively true. It's the biggest government the world has ever seen. It's just not sustainable, especially with 350 million people living in the United States, and obviously how polarized we are, and how no matter who gets in control, they always want to control the other person, their body, all that stuff. Like, it is not sustainable. So I'm just curious to see how it's going to. Hopefully, it's a decentralization somehow, peacefully. That'd be great. I don't know.
Sounds good.
All right, on to some doom and gloom, but it's very important, I think. I've got an article that I'm pulling up here. It is called Yahoo Finance. And by the way, so Alex sent this to me. I could not believe they published it, and we'll find out why. So it's titled The Next Recession. It was published on December 9th, so one day ago from this recording. Here's when the everything bubble will burst. I like that they included the everything bubble too, and they're not just concentrating on like real
housing
estate
or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. So in October 20XX, that's not a typo, to reach the best guesstimate of when the next recession will begin, we need to understand how the Federal Reserve creates unsustainable booms and why the next bust may be just around the corner. That sentence right there was exactly why I thought right away, and Al even heard me like exclaiming next to him as I was reading this yesterday afternoon, like, how did they publish this? Because the media is so bad at telling the truth that I could not believe they're starting to actually talk about the real culprit behind the bubbles, which is the Fed. So back to the article. A caveat is in order. As physicist Niels Bohr exclaimed, prediction is very difficult, especially if it is about the future. End quote. Nevertheless, I will weigh in fearlessly with my 10 cents. The Fed's inflationary policies have increased my 2 cents fivefold. That was a joke. Maybe the next cryptocurrency is on the horizon. My 10 cents. If a dog can have crypto, Dogecoin, why can't a retired finance professor?
Do you know what Doge means?
Go for it.
Do only good every day.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then the dog is their mascot.
Nice. Why can't a finance professor who warned the public that prices were about to accelerate due to the Fed's inflationary policies in the spring of 1976 have one? Consumer prices rose 5.7% in 1976, 6.5% in 1977, Alex?
This month just came out in November. U.S. inflation jumped 6.8%, the fastest rate in 39 years.
Yep.
Weren't you mentioning the 70s?
Yes.
Yep. So it just
7.8.
6.8.
7.6% in 1978, 11.3% in 1979, 13.5% in 1980. And so talk about being right on the money. As inflation was galloping through his presidency, then President Jimmy Carter appointed Paul Volcker, a former U.S. banker and U.S. Treasury official, in 1979 to halt the multi-year price spiral. Volcker succeeded spectacularly. Consumer prices rose 10.3% in 1981, revealing how inflation momentum can continue for a while before the Fed's tight money policies slay the inflation dragon. In 1982, prices rose 6.1%. So that's where this whole, now our inflation is at 6.8%. There you go. 3.2% in 1983, a miracle of miracles, and only 1.9% in 1986. A year before, Volcker stepped down as Fed chairman and was replaced by Alan Greenspan. Al's old enough to remember Alan Greenspan.
Oh, yeah.
To accomplish what was considered at the time improbable due to high inflation expectations, the Volcker-led Fed raised the Fed funds rate. The bank borrows from each other for overnight loans to 22% by December 1980. Yeah, that's pretty hefty. That's like a credit card.
Yeah.
The cost of Volcker's tight monetary policies necessary to halt the dollar slide was back-to-back recessions. Let me repeat that. The cost of Volcker's tight monetary policies necessary to halt the dollar slide was back-to-back recessions. A short downturn, 1980, and then another one, 1981, 1982. A case can be made that one long recession occurred that effect lasted 3 years from 1980 to 1982. You were born in 84?
85.
85. I was born in 83. Pinpointing the moment. One of the biggest leading indicators of a cyclical downturn is the unemployment rate. So this is critical because you're going to hear about, actually, I believe 2 days ago, President Biden and his cabinet were proclaiming, and then all the corporate press were too, about all this wonderful, the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in the past, 30 years or something like that, like a very long time, right? So all of these numbers are aligning, and that's the point of this article, and the discussion is to, like, everything's lining up again. What does it mean? So one of the best leading indicators of a cyclical downturn is the unemployment rate, which reached a cyclical boom in May 1979, 5.6% several months before the 1980 recession, and didn't peak until November 1982, 10.8%. That is a lot. The unemployment rate declined until the next upturn in layoffs began to accelerate in 1990. Al Gore.
The one of the reasons why I think it is necessary for them to increase the rate and maybe stop just peddling money into the system is because inflation does hurt the poor and the middle class. And I've literally seen articles before. One, remember, they said it was transitory. Then they said, okay, remove that. Then they said, hey, it actually this is a rich person problem, and it only hurts the rich. The people who have assets that are already paid for or in locked mortgages, which are rich people have those, are the ones who are benefiting from this. So if I have a $100,000 house, inflation goes up. Now every house is $150,000. Like I benefit from that. Mm-hmm. The people that are literally spending the majority of their money on food, all that other stuff that just went up 6%, gas, and then trying to save, and then even trying to save some and trying to do the baby steps and get some cash in there, that cash is being devalued, and they can't even put it in there. So it's like, holy cow. I mean, it's just a utter lie that inflation helps the poor and middle class. It's a total lie. Because even if your wage goes up to $15 an hour, but everything costs more, like you're evening out at best. Google just announced that they won't raise employees' pay based off of this inflation too. Google people make a bunch more than everyone else, but and I don't know if that's how they justify.
Do.
Oh, it's insane. How much? Yeah. But that's why, like, I mean, unless you want to split the country even more and have an even poorer class and an even richer class.
Seems like that's kind of what they want to do.
Not fundamentally sound. Not.
Nobody wants a strong middle class for some reason. Currently, back to the article. Currently, the unemployment rate has been declining from the lockdown peak of 2020 and has reached levels that historically have signaled the beginning of the end of a cyclical boom. Lockdowns have undoubtedly distorted the employment rate, but the historical pattern reveals that when unemployment rate nears 3% and then turns up, a recession will soon begin. So we're there, right? The other metric here that we're going to go into next is called the yield curve. So the yield curve is one of the most widely followed financial indicators that portend a recession. I love that word. Portend a recession, usually within a year. The yield curve reveals the relationship between short-term and long-term interest rates. Typically, the yield curve is upward sloping, like today when short-term rates are below long-term rates, reflecting a substantial amount of liquidity in the financial markets. When the Fed becomes concerned that the economy is, quote, overheating, it tends to raise the Fed funds rate to cool down the price inflation. So when they're raising these rates, they're trying to cool inflation before it runs into hyperinflation, which occurred prior to the bursting of both the 2000 dot-com bubble and the 2007 dot-com bubble, housing bubble. The yield curve was virtually inverted at the end of 2019, suggesting that a recession would begin sometime in 2020. However, the lockdowns in response to COVID caused an economic downturn in early 2020, not a typical cyclical recession. Now the economy is in another cyclical upswing because the Federal Reserve injected $4 trillion of liquidity to stimulate the economy. At the most recent meeting of the Federal Open Market Commission, it was decided to reduce monthly purchases from $120 billion to $115 billion, so they're tapering. In other words, the Fed will continue to have its foot on the monetary pedal even as the inflation rate recently topped 6% year over year. We just heard from Al, 6.8%. In the past, accelerating inflation would set off alarm bells at the Fed to raise interest rates to dampen inflationary pressure and expectations. Currently, the thinking at the Fed is that price inflation is transitory.
Well, they just took that off.
They did take it off. And therefore, monetary policy does not need to be tightened.
Yeah.
This guy's forecast basically, therefore, is inflation accelerates in 2022. Then the public outcry over skyrocketing prices, because there's only so much we can take. Let's be honest with you. It is now almost $100 to fill up my Suburban, and I'm like, can I afford that kind of stuff with all of the leisurely fishing I do on the weekend? And literally, I'm a half a tank to 3/4 of a tank on the weekend because I drive.
Yeah.
If it goes over 100, I'm gonna start questioning just
fishing trips.
It even hits me. You know what I mean?
Not only that, which I've seen a huge increase too. There's only so much you can pay for food, and food is a necessity. So like once you start messing with that too, which is happening, and people, there's a reason why to then raise the interest rates.
Yeah. So, then the public outcry over skyrocketing prices and the media reports highlighting how prices are decimating the average family's purchasing power may cause the Biden administration to impose wage price controls, as President Nixon did in 1971 to take the sting out of inflation before his 1972 re-election campaign. Biden could use an executive order if Congress doesn't give him statutory authority to impose price controls. Without price controls, I expect the Fed to raise the Fed funds rate sometime in 2022 and continuing tightening in 2023. Thus, the next recession could begin in the fall of 2023, but no later than a year later. If the recession does not begin on schedule, it only means it is postponed and not eliminated.
Yep. I don't think in today's climate is even an option for them to do wage
price controls. No. And here's why do you think?
You hear that word and you go, wait, all my prices are going up, and you're going to start deciding how much I can make. You can go shove it.
And here's why. So so that's your take. I think yours is sort of this just cultural thought process and how it would work out. The Senate just voted 52-48 to strike down the vaccine mandates from Biden's executive orders. Okay.
Yeah.
Right before that, all of the Supreme Court circuits that it was taken into to fight it to strike down these vaccine mandates, they all said, yeah, we're not that you constitutionally can't do this, President Biden.
Yep.
So you have the court system saying no. You have 1/3 of our government saying no, the Senate, right?
Yep.
And now it's going back to the House. So it'll be interested to see what the House of Representatives says. If they get real close to, even if they don't pass it, if they agree with the Senate, or they get really close to, and we're heading into 2022 midterms, I don't think the public support, even with our elected people, it's not going to go forward.
Right. And then also just for timing too, I don't think they're going to do anything drastic besides give more money out and give more free money before the midterms. I think they'll tighten it right after the midterms. And actually, honestly, I don't know if Biden can handle a second term physically. That's just my personal opinion.
Fair enough.
So if you're going to have someone be the fall guy for something that needs to be done, maybe it is him. And then he doesn't run again. Yeah. And you substitute it with someone else. Honestly, that is almost a best case scenario. They can still run a different Democrat. They can still blame Joe for ruining the economy, quote unquote, because, that's how everyone will spin it. But you're not going to do it right before, but right after the elections.
Yeah.
I think they should do it.
Yeah.
So
we'll
see. I think the Fed should raise interest rates.
Oh God, they have to. I mean, honestly.
Yep.
And they really well, here's why I think they have to. You can tell me if your thought process is wrong. Is they have put themselves in a corner of a corner, and they're on the verge of losing their credibility entirely. And what'll happen is if they lose their credibility entirely, the credibility of our dollar as the world's reserve currency will get lost. And then you know what's going to happen? How do you say it? Weimar Germany will happen again, or Zimbabwe. Weimar Germany will happen again, or Zimbabwe will happen again, where your dollar's worthless. Oh, now we're taking wheelbarrow loads of dollars to the supermarket to buy a loaf of bread.
Yep, which actually happened. I didn't think that far. I honestly hope that happens, but just know that now brace yourself. Now brace yourself. If after the midterms this happens, right? And they're not going to tell you that this is going to happen. They're going to tell you everything's fine. They're going to tell you, like we've seen, this is
they're going to gaslight you. They're going to continue to frickin' gaslight you.
Yep, exactly.
So how do you make sure that your firm, if you're listening, is prepared for that? Number one, obviously be fiscally conservative as to the best of your ability. Number two, try to maintain your staff. So unlike Google, on one of these last episodes, we talked about it, is you're going to have to bite the bullet and actually give people real raises that match the actual rate of inflation, because maintaining your staff is very, very important for long-term success, right? Third, maybe you need to consider expanding in the sense of offering additional services, architect to builder.
Yeah.
Shovel-ready projects.
Yep. Our finances, architecture are just fine. But even when it was semi-questionable, when we saw what the builder side was bringing, we were like, oh, okay, that's
exactly
good. So consider that. And next, we have a special guest.
Oh, my gosh. Who is it?
Slightly taller than Nick.
Really?
So we're not going to have Nick reads. We're going to have Elon Musk reads.
Wow, Elon. I can't wait. Here we
go. Thank you, Elon.
Then, at a certain point, really what you're doing is capital allocation. So you're not... It's not money for personal expenditures. What you're doing is capital allocation, and it does not make sense to take the job of capital allocation away from people who have demonstrated great skill in capital allocation and give it to an entity that has demonstrated very poor skill in capital allocation, which is the government. You can think of the government essentially as a corporation in the limit. The government is simply the biggest corporation with a monopoly on violence. And where you have no recourse. So how much money do you want to give that entity?
What was your favorite part about what he just said? Or what was your favorite part about what we just heard? I'm sorry.
I love looking at different ideas from different perspectives. That's why I keep bringing up this thrashing idea, which is a computer perspective applied to how we manage, projects, companies, all that other stuff. The perspective that the government is a capital allocation business.
Corporation.
Yep, corporation.
Let's not call them a business, just a corporation.
Yep. And they're not good at it. And
Terrible.
If you do not think that that is true, if you looked at anything, one of the most prideful things in America is landing on the moon, which was great. After that, the amount of buildup and the amount of your money that was spent on engineers responsible for one bolt on one F-14 fighter, on one piece of space hardware, that was their only job, and the rest they were dwindling their thumbs. I am absolutely serious when I say the government will pay a engineer salary money, which means $75,000 to $140,000 to manage a bolt on one piece of equipment. That capital allocation is absolutely nuts, absolutely insane. That goes for NASA, who I love. That goes for the military-industrial complex, who I wish could be better. That goes for that goes for basically every industry that they are in. They do not know how to allocate capital. That's what I love about it. And and to look at the government like that, and then to go back to tie into what we were talking about earlier, is like, maybe they should focus on the fundamentals, because you get lost in the thrashing when you have all these dollars and they're just going to all these areas. Like, do you know, and as a senator, that, there shouldn't be an engineer for one bolt? Like, you'd have to look into that, see the reasonings. How can they look into that if they're looking into the 100 other million things that they're in? They can't. So looking at the government in that light gives new perspective. That was my favorite thing. What was yours?
My favorite thing was the interviewer at the end. I don't know if you caught what he said. So what Elon said at the end was really interesting, right? He says the government has a monopoly on violence. And I think, and so his statement with that, it went all over the meme world. It went all over the internet after that. Everybody was freaking out, because I don't think they've heard, number one, somebody as prominent as Elon Musk with like 65 million followers on Twitter, or have heard that just in general, if somebody's saying the government has a monopoly on violence. Like, that is a shocking statement to a lot of people, right? To people like me, it is not a shocking statement. But you could hear it in the reporter's voice, right? So if you are still shocked by what you just heard Elon say, and you're still listening to me going like, what does that even mean? I highly encourage you to go to YouTube. I want you to type in the monopoly on violence, and check out this free movie that my friend Chris Coffer and Vinny Marshall has been on this podcast before, when we used to do best advice and worst advice. And so look up The Monopoly on Violence YouTube. It's a production by Stateless Productions, and they will walk you through what it means when Elon Musk says the state has a monopoly on violence.
So I want to bet you $1 that I can predict one of his next texts.
What?
And you got it, like, it's not going to be the next text.
His next tweet.
Tweet. Yeah. Yep. It could be a month or so or something like that. It's going to be peak influence. And then he's at 65.9 million followers. You know how he is. Once he hits 69 million followers, a peak.
It's going to be crazy. I literally was like, my wife and I were just chilling out after supper last night, and I was like, you ever just looked at, she's not a Twitterer. And you and I are only Twitterers in the sense that we just kind of are lurkers. We just follow people.
Yep.
So I go, have you ever actually looked at Elon's feed? She's like, no. And so I went through Elon's feed and I was like, look at this meme he posted. So he talked about how NASA, there's a meme on his feed. You go ahead, scroll down like a few pages, you'll find it. It's a meme where it says, it's hilarious. I'll put it up on the screen as I'm talking about this so you see it. But it's NASA in 1969 or something. 4 kilobytes landed on the moon. It's like this big godlike creature.
Yeah.
And then it's got like these little dinosaurs at the bottom, and it's got text over it, and it says 8 gigabytes of RAM in 2021. And then underneath it says Chrome tab crashy.
Yeah.
So Elon's awesome.
Yep.
In so many different ways.
Cool. All right. I think it's now time for A.R.E. Jeopardy. Let's bring down the team.
Here we go.
All right, question number 1. What is the difference between Schedule 40 and Schedule 80 PVC pipe? Is it A, that Schedule 80 is thicker? Is it B, that Schedule 40 is thicker? Is it C, that Schedule 80 is denser? Or is it D, Schedule 40 is denser?
Great question.
Great question. I hear those numbers all the time. So what's the difference? What do we got? Put it up. C, D, A, C. Correct answer is A. Schedule 80 is thicker.
Now you know.
Same density. Question number 2. Okay, so I got to explain. This question is about conduit, right? And it's about how many bends you can have. So conduit can bend around before it hits into something else.
Electrical conduit?
Electrical
Okay.
conduit, right? So like from a box to an outlet to anything, right? Because you could have everything in conduit. You could even have it outside and going from the street into your building, right? So here's the question. The total cumulative maximum amount of bends in conduit is how many degrees, right? So when you go and then you bend it, let's say you only bend it by 20 degrees and then like 80 degrees to go into the house, and that adds up to 100 degrees, right? Is that the total max or is there more? What is it? Is it A, 90 degrees, B, 180 degrees, C, 360 degrees, D, 550 degrees? Total cumulative max conduit bends in degrees. Ready? B, C, B, B. B was 180. That was the most said. 360. You cannot have more than 360. C. I don't think anyone got that one. Oh, you did? There we go. There we go. Lance,
I'm up.
you're up.
Number 3. What is the typical degree day temperature used when calculating the number of heating or cooling degree days? Is it A, 62? I heard you, Gresh. Is it B, 65? Is it C, 67? Or is it D, 69? I swear I got this question literally on the tests a couple times. I think. It's hard to say. It was a long time ago. But any repeats? Nope, we're good? Okay. B, A, B. The correct answer is B, 65.
There we go.
Number 4, at what minimum slope is needed for a roof to properly drain pipes? So what minimum slope is needed for a roof to properly drain pipes? Is it A, quarter inch per foot? Sorry. A, eighth inch per foot. B, quarter inch per foot. C, half inch per foot. D, 1 inch per foot. What is the minimum slope needed for a roof to properly drain pipes? A, eighth inch. B, quarter inch. C, half inch. D, 1 inch. What do we got?
D.
What did you say?
D.
D. C. A. Or no, sorry. B. A. The correct answer is B. Quarter inch per foot.
Look at that. How many? What's the totals? 2, 1, 2. You don't count. Okay, we have a tie.
Tiebreaker, Marketech.
All right,
Come
here we
on
go.
down, eat the mic.
Rules are everyone gets a chance, but first one to hold up the correct. This will be number and PSIs wins.
So the answer is just going to be a letter, and then I'll tell you the PSIs. So the question is, there are 4 basic types of mortar called N, S, M, and O. Each has a different compressive strength and a different proportion of cement, lime, and aggregate. Which type has the highest compressive strength? So your choices are N, S, M, O.
First and then second.
The correct answer is M. And just so everyone knows who is listening at home, M is 2,500 PSI, S is 1,800 PSI, N is 750 PSI, and O is 350 PSI. So you'd use O in just like an interior non-load bearing wall.
And I think Katie just said that we're going to that new Asian chicken place.
Oh my gosh, and Ken Pratt.
Wow.
Neat.
Good pick. That's it for me. We already promoted. Check out Architect to Builder if you're interested. Lance?
If you like this episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe, leave us a comment. We'll see you next week.